Welcome everyone to another episode of Wolfe Street. For those of you that don't know, my name is Wolfe, and for those of you that do, thanks for checking me out again. As always, you can check me out on all social media platforms at EveryTimeICash, or you could reach out to me directly on my website, everytimeicash.com/contact. This video and videos like this are intended for informational purposes only, and they're not to be substituted as financial advice. If you're looking for financial advice, please seek the help of a financial professional or a financial advisor to help find what is suitable for your needs. This video is going to cover Tesla's earnings release slated for April 26, 2021 after market close. This is going to be a video dedicated specifically for Tesla. Tesla has a cult following, if you may, and it has a very rabid fan base. So I felt that it was important and it was beneficial to have a video just for Tesla's earnings. Now, there will be a couple of other videos this week, hopefully tonight or tomorrow, for the rest of the earnings reports in general. And then there's going to be a video, hopefully, for the outlook that I have about all of this stuff. But this one in particular is just focused on Tesla. So if you aren't interested in Tesla's earnings, please don't waste your time. This is just going to be about Tesla. So if you are, though, interested in Tesla and you want to hear what it is that I'm thinking about or how I'm looking at Tesla's earnings going into the report and after the report, please feel free to check this out, share it, like it, comment below, and give me some feedback if you have any. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right in. I'm going to start with the expectations that we have for Tesla. So Tesla last year was the most popular and the probably the most anticipated stock across the board last year. Momentum trades, growth trades, fanboy trades, ARK trades, it doesn't matter. They were wildly popular and continue to be wildly popular as a company and as a stock. And this is in part because of people's love for not only Elon Musk and the company, but for the product itself. And you see this from time to time. You saw it with Apple about 15 years ago when they launched the first iPhone, and then you saw the trajectory that they had with iPhone growth and with people's love for the iPhone and for just Apple products in general. You saw the same type of rabid fan base and appreciation for the company and the stock. You also saw a little bit of this with Netflix a few years back, but currently right now, Tesla is the do no wrong cult following stock of choice and company of choice. So by and large, last year and this year, expectations are growing and they get higher and higher as the stock elevates more and more. So last year, the stock was up about 700%, and this year it's basically flat. And you see that from time to time when you see stock kind of develop into a mature valuation like Tesla has. So going into last year, Tesla's valuation was nothing like it is today. If memory serves me correctly, it was less than a $100 billion company, and it grew to nearly $1 trillion all within a year. So by and large, the stock really outperformed last year, was up 700%, like I said, and is pretty much flat on the year with it only being up 3%. And in its appreciation, it was helped by the likes of like Cathie Wood and ARK and anybody who loves growth, and the Ross Gerbers of the world who pump it daily on Twitter. So by and large, stock did really well last year. And this year, going into this report, their expected report, 79 cents. That's on a non-GAAP basis. And this is up from 23 cents a year ago. So this shows you just right off the bat how expectations have been ratcheted up for the company. Now, secondarily, the revenue forecast for the quarter is 10.29 billion. We can round up and call it 10.3. That's up 72% year over year. So by and large, the company has grown. By and large, the company has performed. By and large, the company's expectations have grown with it. Now, it's important to note that the fanboys of the company and the Tesla bulls will look for any reason to buoy the stock, and will kind of disregard a lot of the bad news. So you saw that a lot last year. I want to see if that continues into this year, and I want to see if that continues in this report and in reports like this one. So it'll be important for me to see whether or not these expectations kind of hold, or whether or not the fanboys kind of just go, whoa, even we got ahead of ourselves. And so outside of that, I just don't. It's been a habit for Tesla bulls to come in and find reasons to buy the stock and to support stock. So if we get an instance where the company doesn't necessarily perform up to these expectations that you're seeing on your screen, I will look to see whether or not the likes of Cathie Wood and the Tesla bulls in general come in and buy the stock back. Now, the second thing I want to pay attention to are the low-end spectrum of their products, and that's the Model 3 and the Model Y. So I want to see if the deliveries and guidance for the Model Y in particular, which is their smaller crossover SUV, if the recent price bump was reflective of a demand surge, or if it was just kind of one of those things where they're trying to see if they have price elasticity. I want to see if the Model Y demand is still growing. I also want to see if these lower end spectrum products, the Model Y and the Model 3, are cannibalizing any of the sales that we saw for Model S and the Model X. So in particular, when you have a product like products that Tesla has, you don't want the low end, low margin products to kind of eat away at the upper end of your product SKUs, because you want to have the high ticket items sell in conjunction with the lower ticket items. So I want to pay attention to see if the lower ticket items are offsetting any demand for the higher ticket items, number one. Number two, I want to see if there's any visibility on the refresh for the Model X coming up. And then I want to see if they have any explanation or any visibility about their recent price changes. So that's pretty simple there. I want to continue, and I want to see if there are any updates that we can get about the Gigafactory. So want to see if we can get any updates about Germany and Austin, because that could be a tell for production and for deliveries that could come in the next several quarters. So any updates on Gigafactory, any updates on the Austin project, any updates on the Germany project, or frankly China would be welcomed. Outside of that, I want to see if they give any updates about the recent crash that was in the news cycle, and I want to see if there's any input or anything that they're going to say about what's going on in China. There were videos that circulated last week on social media where allegedly the Tesla cars were not allowed onto the freeway in China. So I want to see those things. I also want to see if there will be any insight or any visibility about the Cybertruck or the semi-truck release. So there was a video a couple weeks ago about Elon driving around Austin headquarters in a Cybertruck, and there were leaked photos and videos of the Cybertruck. If they can give any input about that, that could be another lever that they pull, and then just kind of squeeze anyone who's negative on the company. So I want to see if these things are material or if they're anything that will be shared. Beyond that, if they could speak on any sort of competition that's taking place, or if they have any commentary about their competitors, it'll be interesting. So one of the things that Tesla's enjoyed in the last several years has been their EV credits. So essentially, companies get EV credits and their tax credits by and large from governments for keeping a low carbon footprint. So since Tesla has been 100% EV, they've had the benefit of receiving these tax credits. And though these tax credits are not like the end all be all, and they make up a small portion of their overall profit, if you will, they have been the catalyst for why Tesla has been able to claim that they've had profitable quarters now and have ultimately ended up being included in the S&P. So essentially Tesla would receive these credits and then they would trade, which is just another word for sell, these credits to legacy automakers. And because they're getting these credits they're not paying for the credits, they just get them and they're able to sell them. They're selling them at a pure profit. So this profit, like I said, it's not much of the company's profit and revenues, but it is still $400 million. So last quarter they had profits of $400 million on these EV credit sales, and that was up from 133 million a year prior. But that $401 million in EV credit sales, essentially, or EV credits, was slowed from 397 million a quarter prior. So the primary function for me, for why I focus on this, is it could be a tell for whether or not these competition or these competitors no longer need to buy these credits from Tesla. And all that says is if they're not having this leg up, or if they don't have this benefit that they had to the degree that they had in the past, it could mean that these other competitors are seeing their own demand and are seeing a little bit of growth, and it could hamper some sort of, stickiness or growth that Tesla's enjoyed for the last several years. So this is just a word salad. It's a fancy way of saying if Tesla's EV credits that they've enjoyed as pure profit show any sign of slowing, it could just be a read-through that their competitors are finally starting to get their act together and they're no longer needing to buy as many of these credits from Tesla because they're getting themselves credits they're just being issued the credits themselves. So that's kind of what I want to look at, and that's what I want to pay attention to on that front. And then for me, I find this beneficial because it kind of leads into the next point that I've been interested in. And so that's Tesla recently had an investment in Bitcoin. And this was announced in February. And it's really interesting because the timing of the announcement came at such a unique time. In February, Tesla disclosed that they bought $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. And at that point, the profits, the paper profits that is, from Bitcoin were on pace to exceed all of 2020's EV sales for Tesla, which is pretty astounding, right? So Tesla was able to get to nearly $1 trillion in market cap. And then in about 6 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it was, they were able to generate that same level of profit just from putting $1.5 billion into Bitcoin. Now, there's a couple of important things about that. And in general, the amount of money that they put in there wasn't nearly, it wasn't a huge number relative to their market cap and whatever money they had on hand. It's not like they're risking it all for Bitcoin. But there are some unique advantages and disadvantages to doing this. And in particular, there's no GAAP rules for digital asset accounting, and Tesla has stated that Bitcoin will be held as an intangible asset. So what that means is, in layman terms, as the price of Bitcoin goes up, they don't have to necessarily acknowledge any profit on that price appreciation until they sell. So if they bought Bitcoin at like 34,000, which I think is the assumed value that they bought it at, and then the price of Bitcoin goes to, let's say, 100,000, they don't necessarily have to report or account for that difference in price into their earnings. Now, however, on the downside, they are able to, and they are going to account for any volatility and any impact to their earnings to the downside. So part of the reason I find that interesting and find that important is because of what I said in the previous slide. So in the previous slide, I went over their EV credit advantage that they've had for the last several years. And now that that's starting to kind of wind down and slow down, I think from my, it's just an opinion, but I think that this is just a unique way for them to account for any softness that they could possibly have in their earnings. So, if Bitcoin starts to stall out, which we've seen in the last week or two, that it's starting to stall out and that it's no longer up and away, and it could potentially go into a little bit of a consolidation period or a little bit of a downtick period. It's a very interesting and unique way for Tesla to be like, hey, last quarter when we reported Bitcoin, it was at 55,000 and now it's at 48, 49, whatever it is. And part of why our earnings aren't as good is because of Bitcoin and volatility of Bitcoin. Now they may not say that explicitly, but this, as I said earlier in this video, Tesla bulls are notorious for coming up with every excuse for why the company doesn't hit their targets or why the company doesn't necessarily meet their expectations. So this is not a reach to say that maybe the company finds a little bit of a loophole and finds a way for them to say, hey, we did well, but we were impacted by Bitcoin volatility. Now, you could be skeptical and you can say, hey, where are you getting this from, right? So, excuse me, go back. So you could be skeptical and you can say, where are you getting this from, right? So Tesla explicitly in their 10K said, quote, the cost basis of the digital assets will not be adjusted upward for any subsequent increases in their quoted prices on the active exchanges. Gains, in parentheses, if any, close parentheses, will not be recorded until realized upon sale. So Tesla's telling us that they're not going to account for any gains that they could possibly have in the stock, and that they are going to account for any fluctuations to the downside in their accounting. So where am I getting this from? I'm getting this directly from their 10K, which you can go to the SEC.gov and you can look up their 10K and you could go directly. So in my case, I'll go to, it's page 106. I already found it for you. You can go directly to page 106. Let's see. And you could read it here. So it's directly their words, not mine. They've come in and they've told you explicitly how they're going to account for this and how they're going to go ahead and report this. So they're telling you they're not accounting for any upside because of the way that they've held it on their balance sheet, and any downside could be accounted for to the downside. Now, this is also important for Tesla bulls and for the fans of Tesla because of everyone's favorite old chipmunk lady, which is what I like to call, which is how I like to refer to Cathie Wood right now. And I just like to have a little fun with it. But the relationship between Bitcoin and Tesla is interesting because Cathie Wood, who was the primary catalyst last year for anybody who was a momentum fanboy, they had a primary catalyst in Cathie Wood's way, and she was a very, very, very important reason for why the stock went to where it went last year. Doubled down every time. Told you that it was going to 3,000. Told you this. Told you that. Now, as of late, her word on Tesla is not necessarily coming to fruition like it was last year. So last year, people would just literally, before they go to bed, see how much more of Tesla Cathie bought or sold, and then kind of knee-jerk follow the big whale into the name the following day. So they would go online, and they say, oh, ARK bought, X thousand shares of Tesla. That's good. Let's go buy Tesla. And they would continue to buy it. Now, secondarily, ARK recently put out a new absurd price target, on Tesla, and put out a quote-unquote research report that really was kind of half-assed at best. And the stock didn't follow suit the way that it should, given the fact that she basically told everyone that it was a generational buy where it's at today. Now, this is also important because since putting out that report, ARK has bought Tesla one time and has sold Tesla 3 times in their reporting. So it's kind of a head scratching mechanism or it's kind of a head scratching moment, for ARK and for Tesla bulls, because she's putting out these reports and telling you how great it's going to be and how great things are. But, the way that this company, and this company being ARK, has traded Tesla since putting out that report has not been in lockstep with how you expect them to be pounding the table on Tesla, given how bullish that report was. Secondarily, ARK last year outperformed, the entire street, basically. And this year, they're down 3.7% year to date as of Friday's close. And that's with the S&P up 6.5% and with the NASDAQ up about 2% year to date. So she's underperforming, the stock's underperforming. And on the other end, Bitcoin is another one of her darling positions, which is starting to underperform on a relative and absolute basis in the last couple of days. So the relationship between Tesla and Bitcoin and how they've kind of positioned themselves moving forward in being able to use Bitcoin as a crutch for why things may or may not have worked out is kind of intriguing to me, because in that accounting trick, or in that, I don't want to call it a trick because that comes with a negative connotation, but in that sort of accounting, it kind of runs counter to the fervor that was going on in Tesla and in ARK and with the fanboys of both going into this year. So I want to see how this story unfolds, especially given Cathie's stake in the Coinbase IPO and how she's been doubling down basically daily in that name while bleeding out. So I want to see how that story unfolds. I want to see how Bitcoin unfolds. And I want to see if the fanboys, and in this case fangirls, find a way for them to come in and support the stock despite Bitcoin. And then on the other side, and this will be the positive side, given that she's been a net seller since putting out that report of Tesla, and she'll argue that it's positioning, and people will argue that it's positioning, and I'm not having that argument. But what it does do is it gives her and it gives ARK an opportunity to then step back in and provide the support that the stock has seen in the past, should they be soft in their numbers, or should they miss, or should numbers even freaking matter, So given that they've been a net seller and they've kind of lightened up, and I'm not saying that she's a net seller, like she's sold the stock and her position is really, really small. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying that since they put out a report telling you that, their bear case, I think, was 5 times the price of where the stock was when they put out the report, and that was their bear case. Since putting that out, they've sold Tesla 3 times and they've bought Tesla 1 time. And that could potentially set up an opportunity for, a potential gap down after a weak report, and they step in and they buy. Or on the other side, a breakout, and now ARK's underweight and they need to get in, and they just buy at any price and continue to push the stock higher. So it's a really interesting dynamic here with ARK and with Tesla and with Bitcoin, and I really want to see how that plays out. So now that I've gone over all of that, and I want to, and we've kind of tapped into all of that, we want to talk about the technicals, right? So before I jump into technicals, I touched on this briefly, but it is something that bears worthwhile to mention again. Tesla has an expectation for the Cybertruck to be delivered by 2022. So if they're able to give you any input about the Cybertruck deliveries and about any sort of Cybertrucks being delivered before 2022, that could potentially create a catalyst for the next leg up. That's one thing to consider. The other thing is the semi-truck project that Tesla has. So Musk a few weeks back was on record as saying that they are, I don't want to misspeak here, but they aren't totally optimistic about their ability to deliver on the trucks this year. If that changes, that's another catalyst and another revenue stream and another vertical that, could squeeze out anybody who's bearish or wants to get negative the stock. So these are things that you want to pay attention to in the call or in the next call or just in the coming days. If there is any hint to the Cybertruck or to the semi-truck pre-2022, it could really squeeze the stock moving forward. So with that, we want to say, well, where to? Like where could the stock get to? So on your screen, you'll see the chart that I watch for Tesla, and essentially I've highlighted a wedge in blue that I've kind of been paying attention to, and it's kind of how the stock traded. So by and large, the most important moving average that the stock has held recently has been the 150-day moving average. So first, it was the 100-day moving average, and that was back in late February. And this coincided with what was deemed the Cathie bottom. So I'm going to put an arrow here for you. At 619 was the low on February 23rd, 2021. This was after Tesla told you that they bought Bitcoin. This was something that prompted Jim Cramer to come in and call it the Cathie bottom. She stepped in and she bought it. So that functioned as support. The 100-day functioned as support. And then it didn't take but like a week later for that 100-day moving average and that 619 level to snap and essentially push through below that 150-day moving average and essentially ultimately hold it 2 days later. And that has functioned as support, being tested 3 times in late March, holding and then rallying from there. So from there, I want to pull down to the hourly because I like to use hourly charts on the stock to kind of leg in. And you'll see that there was a downtrend in the stock. It broke out, essentially kind of retested this uptrend in blue, and then broke out of this downtrend on a gap up and kind of held and has been riding up ever since, right? So first and foremost, let me isolate this in pink. First and foremost, there's a little bit of a wedge being formed in the name here, and it's finding resistance every time it gets to this downtrend in pink on the hourly basis, right? So that's first and foremost. Second of all, there's a little bit of a head and shoulders potentially forming, again, on an hourly basis, and it's in a wedge. You can see the wedge pretty defined here. I'm going to give you a little bit of a circle. Maybe it'll isolate it a little bit better for you. So there, you get a little bit of a wedge in pink, that pink wedge that I've drawn a circle around, and that's all leading into tomorrow, right? Outside of that, you have a broader downtrend that started in late January, and we've tested it and failed and tested it and failed, basically tested it and failed again. And then on an upside, on the uptrend, you've had this blue uptrend kind of hold. So you got a really large wedge in the name. You've got a smaller wedge within that. You got a head and shoulders inside that broader wedge. And I'm going to go back to the daily so I can point this out a little bit more clearly. So should there be any bad news, I want to see if the stock can hold the 150-day moving average again. And this again would set the stock back to essentially that 619 Cathie bottom low, basically. And as I said in the previous slide, she's lightened up since she put out her report, which kind of just gives her a little bit more ammo to reload at a lower price should the stock go down. Now, if it were to break this blue uptrend wedge, whatever you want to call it, the next level I'm interested in is the 200-day, which kind of 560, 550. It could overshoot to the downside, but I'm looking for that 550, 560 level, somewhere around there to hold if it were to break. And then outside of that, if it starts to just shatter, I'm looking for prior highs. So 500, I think this is it's 360, 365. So I'm looking for prior highs to kind of hold on a extreme. And this is not anything that I'm expecting anytime soon, but this is just a level, like how I think of things in terms of levels. Should it ever get back to basically 200 and 190, look for insane support. But I'm not expecting that in any way, shape, or form. I'm just giving you my thought process, kind of. So prior highs, like I said, 500 should offer extreme support if it ever got there. 560 should offer extreme support should it get there because it's 200 day. And then the 150 day has offered up major support now 5 times in this year. So that's the downside, right? So on the upside, like I said previously, she's lightened up her position enough to where if it were to break out, she's gonna have to re-enter the stock, especially considering the market mechanics of a circular loop where, you know, Tesla does good, people step in and buy ARK, right? Tesla does bad, people sell ARK. So should Tesla exceed expectations, or should they say something that, you know, people don't expect? Should they say something about the Cybertruck? Oh, we're ahead of schedule, or anything like that. I will look to see whether or not she becomes the buyer of last resort, or whether or not she becomes the marginal buyer that kind of pushes the stock higher at any price, basically. Should it break out? So should it break out, first thing I want to see is a retest of this blue line, and this could happen before the report. So this is something I'm watching going into the report. And then outside of that, I want to see the breakdown level at 775. If it breaks there, I'm looking for 800 basically. And then from there, I'm just looking at this. Let me give you a little arrow. Looking at this gap resistance at 815 essentially. And then looking for a gap fill at 850. And then you look at prior all-time highs, etc. Now, should they report, and should the stock, you know, gap up, there are instances where the stock gaps up and then sells off back to the downtrend that it was resisting previously. So should we get a gap up and then a sell off, but then hold this downtrend break, it can provide an opportunity to get into the name after the report for a secondary launch, should people like Cathie and the fanboys step in and buy the stock. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. These are some of the thoughts that I'm having. Hopefully you found this beneficial. Hopefully you liked the content. If you did, please leave me a comment below in the comment section. Please like it. Please reach out to me on social media. Let me know. Please share it. If you haven't already, please follow my project that I'm going to release here soon at Doji TV on StockTwits and Twitter. A lot of this stuff's going to get moved over to Doji, and I'm going to have a little bit of a rebrand here shortly with an app to follow, etc., etc. So as always, if you found this helpful, please like, comment, subscribe, share it, leave me a comment in the comment section, and please stay safe, please stay profitable, and please, as always, stay locked in.